This podcast is brought to you by Hoare Chartered Accountants. Hoare Chartered Accountants are based in Galway City and are a leading provider of audit, accountancy and taxation services. For more information, visit hoarecharteredaccountants.ie. Now you're welcome along to the Maroon and White pod. So unfortunately at the weekend it was defeat for Galway against Roscommon, 216 to 21 points. And in dramatic circumstances, obviously Galway leading quite comfortably at the break and Roscommon producing a really impressive comeback just to edge it at the weekend. Galway now switched their attention to a clash with Donegal in Ballyshannon on Sunday at 1:15. So it obviously means so far that Galway have got obviously a draw against Kerry, a win against Armagh, defeat to Roscommon and defeat to Mayo. A nice easy one for you to start, Morris. Where are the Galway senior footballers at the minute?
Um, that's a tricky question. I think they're pretty close to where they want to be, is the honest answer. But I think your starting point for something like this, Paul, is what is the league for? What do you want to get out of it? And the reality for a lot of teams is that that is for understandable reasons, a deeply individual question because in a Kerry context, they had a lot of lads who came back really, really late this year. And that is, that is the reality. They had some lads who weren't back on the pitch until a week or two before the start of the league. So what they wanted from the league might have been to develop a little bit new faces and develop some a small bit of momentum going into the Munster Championship. You've Donegal, I think, wanted to banish the demons of what happened last year's All Ireland final. Galway are in kind of a halfway house, I think. There's an element of last year didn't end the way that they wanted to, and maybe there was a sense that they wanted to give everybody a reason to get back on board and get in behind this team again as the year started. They wanted to unearth some new players, definitely, and they're in the process of doing that. If you can get two or three players out of a league, you'd be very happy, and a bit of consistency around performance. And they're hitting similar markers game on game. So I think ultimately, people can tend to get very high or very low after league games, but the reality is that the stretch that matters for this team this year is the end of the league. You think about it, last game is against Dublin in the league. We're not going to make a league final at this stage. You come out of that game against Dublin. Your first game in the Connacht Championship is also in Pearse Stadium, Connacht semi-final. Play Mayo in the Connacht final this year if they get there now. And there's a question about that given how good Roscommon look. But if Mayo get there, that game is also in Pearse Stadium. Three games in a row in Pearse Stadium. In the new format, if you're a top seed, your first game in the new format is also at home. Four games in a row in Pearse Stadium. If you win that game, you've got a 50-50 chance of your second game being in Pearse Stadium. So there's every world in which we're talking about five games in Pearse Stadium and then it's into Croke Park. That's the stretch that matters for this team. That's it. Get that right. Arrive into Croke Park in form, and that's where their ambitions are. So, in terms of building towards that, I don't think they're in a bad place.
What did you think coming out of your stadium Saturday evening when you were coming out? Because I heard so much Saturday evening chatting to different people. It's the way the new game is, but obviously it's tough to take when you're in such a commanding position. And obviously, Oisin McDonagh has the opportunity even to draw the game, and unfortunately, his effort is saved by Roscommon goalkeeper there. So, what do you think? Like, because obviously you're in such a in control basically, and then obviously slips. It's probably roles reversed to what happened in Tralee.
Yeah, and look, the nature of my job is I'm writing for a national rather than just a county audience. So to be honest, when I was leaving Pearse Stadium, I was thinking more about Roscommon than I was about Galway. Just how impressive it is what they've done this year, and a new manager coming in, and just his ability to get on with it without the Bridges lads, and they've started to develop there was very impressive. From a Galway perspective, given what I just said, Paul, and look, I know you're constantly trying to uh, you're constantly trying to deal with the reality that some teams have, or some people will be very critical of Galway right now, and some people think people are too harsh on them, and the reality is probably somewhere in between. Uh, for me, anyway, a lot of the things that you were hoping to see from a Galway perspective in terms of developing some new players is still continuing to happen. So I came out of that game saying, Eamon McGrath did damn well there for a lad in his second game in goals. Shane McGrath is what we hoped he would be and looks like a real find and a guy who can absolutely have a big impact in championship. Some players who maybe their form recently would have been something that you were kind of looking at and wondering about. are getting back to that kind of 2024 level, or in certain cases even before that again. So I think of a guy like, for me, Dylan McHugh was in a kind of an interesting point where 2024 he's in Player of the Year conversation going into an All Ireland final. Didn't have, I mean, he wasn't bad by any stretch in that All Ireland final, but he wasn't amazing, and he kicked a wide at the end, which definitely seemed to hurt him a lot. And despite the fact that we're into the new rules in 2025, he shot a lot less and maybe wasn't going forward in the same way. And then you go back to last weekend and see him the way he's getting forward and getting up and kicking a point, and you're like, that's really encouraging to see. And based on a couple of recent performances and from what you hear, maybe some of what he did in challenge games recently, I think of a guy like Sean Kelly, who now is back to what he was pre-injury and is just a sensational footballer, a real premium top tier player, and we're seeing signs of that as well. So all of that stuff would bode pretty well, right? I mean, you'd be encouraged by a lot of that. All the while, game management is a very important attribute in a team, and they did not manage the end of this game well. And the Yoshi McDonagh chance is definitely one of them. And to me, you fist that ball over the bar, you get out of dodge with a draw, you take it. But even a couple of stretches before that, Robert Finlay missed a free. I know it's against the wind, but it's just think something he would expect to kick at the same end. They actually had a sideline, a fast break, and kicked that ball away and got turned over kind of unnecessarily, just too quick. So I think that their close will be, I'd say, a frustration, and there'll be a lot of review based on that. But overall, I mean, I don't think they'll be panicking by any stretch of the imagination.
Oshie McDonagh's chance. Do you nearly give him a bit of plaudits? I know obviously he didn't get the chance and it saved and everything, but just the bravery to go for it, to be a new player, to take that chance on. Obviously, it didn't work out, but on another day, it could work out if you get me.
This is the thing, Paul. This is the conversation. Uh, it's funny. Armagh got pelters for what they did
Mm.
against Galway in terms of fisting the ball over the bar. And I don't know if he meant it or not, but I thought Kieran McGeeney's answer after the Donegal game was interesting, where they fisted one ball over the bar in the first half and then went for a lot of goal chances in the second half that they obviously didn't get, didn't score any of them. I think four goal shots in the second half. And to me, the fisted point is an interesting thing because there are people who, when we're proposing new rules, wanted it banned outright. They wanted to get rid of it. Um, and to me, the ultimately, like I do not understand a coach banning his players from fisting the ball over the bar because you're at your core, you're taking a decision away from a player. And at its Gaelic football, at its absolute core, is ultimately all it is a examination of your decision making. That's it. That's the game. Like, and you can you deal with it under emotion, under fatigue, with your technical competency. But it's about your decision making in the moment, and you should trust in players' decision making and make them make the right call. Now, in that context, I think you again, so you trust in players' decision making, but in the context of a point down at home, having been 13 points up, to me, you take the draw. You just fist the ball over the bar. You understand game state. I appreciate your point, and in fairness, when Park was asked about this after, he made the point. You've got two options there, not one. It's not just fist the ball over. It's either come in on the angle and shoot low, so rather than going straight at the goalkeeper and shooting straight at Brady, or fist the ball over the bar. So that's the way he sliced and diced it. But to me, I get your point. To me, it's one of those situations where you just get that ability to get a result and to salvage a draw. And yeah, I think you're in that context, you're better off fisting the ball over the bar. A lot of people won't be happy with that answer.
I was listening to Pork obviously after the game, the last day. He obviously talked about the two goals they gave away, but in particular, he talked about a number of players all going up for the one ball on a couple of occasions. Do you think that was one of the main reasons for, I suppose, Roscommon getting back into this game and go, I suppose, coughing that lead up?
See that kick out was there's fundamentals on kickouts and on breaking ball that you should just do every single time, right? There's just and I'd say from a coaching perspective, there's just things you would drill every time. And two jumpers competing for one ball is not one of them. Like, there's you just absolute basics that you can't go get away from. So if that's and coaches will have kind of these buzzwords that they'll use to drill that, but they're all boiling down to the same thing. It's in terms of how you box out, arrive, don't stand, uh, breaking, but have a stacking goal side. So if you've got three goal side, because typically that's where the ball will break on one far side, and gotta just yeah, we're in a good spot at that stage, and kick out goes long. Conor Ryan comes opens his body, great catch, but he's able to catch that ball because he's two jumpers in the air, and then the Smith takes off, and yeah, from that point on, it's damn legitimation. I actually thought maybe in that instance would Johnny McGrath have nearly been better of going to Enda Smith and at least at a minimum make him go to the outside post. So rather than him being centre able to shoot with his right foot into the bottom corner, if you force him wide and make that angle slightly tighter and he's shooting back, he either ships that ball to that side, but it's a shot closer to the end line, if you know what I mean, as opposed to being in centre. But just try and narrow that angle. But at that stage, the ship is going under, and you're trying to decide what's the best way to go down with it. So yeah, I think that'll be a huge frustration to me. To answer your question, that's not the stretch that cost Galway the game. The stretch that cost them was the first 15 minutes. They just missed too much during that. They left a lot behind them. It took 10 minutes to get a point with the breeze, but that's not to say they didn't have a lot of chances. And I thought maybe they could have been a good bit up by more actually at halftime. They were up by 11 points at halftime. They ended up going up by 13 after 14 minutes, but they could have stretched that further clear. And once Roscommon starting to reel them in and the form that some of their inside forwards are in, it was unfortunate that they ended up coming back into it. You still, I mean, I think Galway had eight more shots. So you look at it, I don't think they took. Ultimately, they didn't take enough of their chances. That's stating the obvious.
You obviously mentioned there 16-5 up at half time. Liam O'Connell are probably one of the biggest positives in that open period.
Big time, yeah. That was a crucial. You look at the start of this game. Phil McDonough has a goal chance it's saved. Ender Tierney misses a two. Robert Finlay kicks a wide. Then he kicks a point on his right foot, but then they go back to McGrath misses a two. Finlay tries a two on his right, and that drops short. And at that stage, then you're not panicking, but you're very conscious of we're in Pearse Stadium and the flags are going a million miles an hour, and we've seen these dramatic comebacks in the second half, and all the while at the other end of the pitch, Roscommon are making the most of any ball that they get. And sure enough, it actually starts with Matthew Tierney kicks a super two-pointer, kind of settles Galway, and you start to see their attacking shape basically. And then Liam O'Connell comes, I think, is it 5 points in five
Yeah.
minutes? I was trying to tot it up off the back of that there, but that was super, and you can see why he was in the team in that context. To have another 2 point shooter is definitely beneficial, and the fact now that being able to spread that load across Shane McGrath, Liam, Matthew Tierney, Robert Finlay, in the context of we're not talking about players who are missing, we just you make the most of what you have was pretty encouraging. So yeah, that was really a really impressive burst there, and that was suddenly then you're thinking, okay, finally there's a chance here to kick on and really drive push your total way up because you know what's inevitably coming down the tracks after that.
Yeah, even when Liam does on 42 minutes puts Galway 19-6 ahead, it was sort of hard to. I know the new game and the breeze and everything, but at that situation, you were still sort of, I suppose, feeling pretty confident. But in fairness, Roscommon come back all guns blazing.
Yeah, and it's a different kind of game to a certain respect. If you saw the scoreline and you asked me from what was the difference in this game, say, well, one team was kicking kickouts against the breeze versus with the breeze, and it must have just come down to kickouts against the wind. And then you look at the actual net totals after the game, and Roscommon scored, I think, 2 points off Galway's kickout. So you're like, okay, well, that's definitely not what cost them this game. That there's something beyond that. But then you look more closely, and the Roscommon scored 1-9 off turnovers. So one goal, two two-pointers, and 5 points from the what I would deem to be kind of sloppy use of possession, or even not necessarily sloppy use of possession, but just the ball drops short, win it, and then as they try and work it out, they're just swarmed. And Jack Lane I don't know, he had a huge amount of options other than kick that ball up the line, and Roscommon's come and scored that second goal. So it's not the same as maybe some other games where you're seeing these dramatic lurches because teams just can't get their kick out off and they're getting absolutely swarmed and it's coming down on top of them. It was slightly different to that. But yeah, I mean, to be honest, Paul, I'm increasingly like I don't know what a safe lead is at halftime anymore. Like, so there was never a point where I was saying this is done because this is the new world here and we're all getting used to it.
Is it beginning to come a frustration, do you think, the way Galway are coming in and out of league games? If you obviously look, Mayo, they're obviously trailing, they come back. Armagh, obviously, second half, they produced a late comeback. Kerry, obviously, as well down in Tralee. And the last day, in the first half, and then I suppose losing that lead in the second half. Do you think that's beginning to come a bit of a frustration now?
I think it's very hard to get a stay that kind of consistent bank across a game, but I do I accept the premise of what you're saying. I definitely do because uh, I think this Galway team and what they've established over the last couple of years, they're a really resilient, battle-hardened team, a phenomenal ability to stay in a fight and come to it. And this is something I spoke to you about in that kind of final last year. They had that poster on the dressing room wall about blood doesn't show on a maroon jersey, and it's the image of the team they're trying to distill. And that's all well and good, you know, that resilience is thing. But then last week, John Maher was up for media, and I asked him a question about this specifically, about this characteristic in a team. And he decided to go outside GAA for understandable reasons, but he said, think about some of the great teams that you know, like think a Man City, New Zealand rugby, whoever. How many times have ever been called a resilient team? Like sometimes these teams are just good because they're able to put teams to the sword, lower the blade, go and get it done. And resilience necessarily mightn't actually be a trait that you want to be known for. It's good to have it if you need it, but if you're consistently to show resilience, it means that maybe your performance isn't amazing and you need to get into the trenches and dog it out again and again. And that's why like Galway have only, you know, they've dug out some great results, but they've also lost five. They've only lost five one-score games, five one-point games since the 2022 championship that is. But you're constantly in that kind of armor wrestle, and I'd say there is an element of a stage where they can just lower the blade and put teams away when the chance is there. And that's why I thought that stretch in the first half was might be the most frustrating thing because that was your time to, you know, if Fionn McDonough sticks that goal and or a couple of those shots are, and it's the fact that you're kicking 2 pointers and actually dropping them short is a killer as opposed to, you know, even if they're going wide and you chance to squeeze the kick out. So yeah, I would say there's an element of frustration around that. I don't think any team is going to get consistent control across the game. This is just the nature of the sport now. But I do think that that lack of maybe ruthless mentality to go out, it's a great sign that you can win a game by a score every now and again. But could you win it by 10 scores? Could you really put a team down? I'd say they want to try and flex that muscle a bit more as well.
Do you think now the aim is just about securing the status?
100%, yeah, yeah. And I wouldn't overlook. Look, there's things that people on the outside, the likes of us or supporters, wouldn't necessarily be as interested in. But from a Galway perspective, it's not if they get relegated, it's not a good thing for their gate, and that's ultimately that's revenue that will pay for extra players on squads if they want to carry more than the 36 or um, training facilities or all that kind of stuff that they want to be conscious of. So relegation wouldn't be a good thing. Obviously, I don't think I, if you're boiling it down, what is their ambitions out of the league? Ultimately, I think it would have been to unearth a couple of players, maybe take a step forward, get some lads back in form, nail their goalkeeping situation, that kind of thing. So yeah, if you boil it down for me, and I think their option now is to stay up, but they have the two worst teams in the league coming down the tracks in Monaghan and Dublin, so they have a decent chance of doing that.
Just some of the comments to come in from listeners this week. Noel Madden, how can you lose a 12-point lead to a team missing the whole contingent of players from their county champions, with many of those players being certain starters come championship? Seamus Brannock, what is this team to show after 7 years? We're nowhere near an All Ireland than we were 7 years ago. Just on some of these comments from supporters, it's hard to understand in one way. I know obviously it's frustrating for supporters to see Galway lose the lead against Roscommon, but it is only February. It is only round four of the league, and in some senses, for what we have at the minute, do you think maybe our expectations are too high?
Yeah, there is a question. So this is a very interesting topic, and I'll be straight with you, Paul. I recently spoke about the sentiment around the county, and I feel like it might have been misunderstood in places in terms of some people might have thought I was talking about the sentiment in the camp, which I obviously would never dream of pretending to understand, or like I don't know how they feel inside there, and I wouldn't ever claim to know. But I those comments are I think people were really disappointed by how last year finished, understandably, right? Losing to that Mead team and the way the year ended. There's this group have, by dint of the fact that they've won four Connacht titles in a row and they've gotten to where they are, the bar is continuing to getting higher. And ultimately, the ambition that everybody around the county has is the same as that group has in terms of getting to an All Ireland. So that noise, I hear it too. Like I know people are frustrated, and I'm sure the manager are frustrated. And I have absolutely zero doubt that when Paul Joyce tells us how tough last winter was for him and the players, that is true. I, I I think we'll learn in time that maybe one of the roughest winters they've had has been the most recent off season and some of the harsh conversations and things that went around that. So I'll take all that for granted. At the same time, I do think Galway deserve credit for cultivating what they have cultivated and getting to where they have. And four Connacht titles is not a mean thing. And they're close, right? They are close. They've done a lot right. They definitely need to do a small bit more to get beyond that. But I do think the there was maybe an expectation placed on this team early that they might necessarily have actually I don't want to say deserved, but 2022 kind of came early in their trajectory in terms of getting to that final, and then suddenly the only thing that comes after that is trying to get it over the line, and they haven't done that. But the same thing is true for 31 other teams every single year, and this is the nature of sport. And I think the most disappointing thing with last year might have been some of their performances rather than going after results. So I don't think this. I think this group are moving in the right direction. I think they are have cultivated something pretty good. I think they're learning to get on with it without players being there. So I don't want to dismiss people who are frustrated and who feel like we should, the likes of myself and yourself should be nailing them to the stakes and holding their feet to the fire. But ultimately, this is it's so hard. They're so fucking hard won. Like All Irelands are brutal and they're doing a hell of a lot more right than they're doing wrong. And I think sometimes you just have to trust that, is this a team who are doing as much as is available? Is if and I think he does, but if Park Joyce had the genuine interest of Galway football at his heart when he sat down and considered whether or not you should stay on last year, the answer is unequivocally, like undeniably. I will argue this with anybody. Yes, if wasn't in Galway's best interest that he stay, it absolutely was. It absolutely was. So I think when you consider all of that and see the reality of the situation, you just have to give them credit and say, yeah, this is a team that have done a hell of a lot right, and in my opinion, are still moving in the right direction.
Do you find some of that reaction harsh, even when you're chatting among supporters at the minute?
You do, but like supporters are people are completely entitled to feel how they feel, and the reason you like we're all on this slow march towards the inevitable end. Like the reason you get invested in the sport because it makes you feel something, and you should lean into that. And if that means Mayo fans getting carried away with what Kobe McDonald did last weekend, isn't that great? Or if it means people doomsdaying when things aren't going well, the whole point is to feel something. So I think some of that is definitely harsh. I mean, yeah, like how losing by 12 points is or being up by 12 points. That comment that you referenced there, but like I'm sure Jack O'Connor was getting similar stuff
Mm.
around Kerry last week when he also lost to a team down a lot of their players, or sorry, Drew with Galway down a lot of their players. But this is the nature of the game now. You just have to grin and bear some of that. So yeah, to be honest, I do. The expectation and to me for this Galway group in the league this year was unearth 2 to 3 players who can make a contribution in championship and stay up for a couple of different reasons. And if they do that, I don't think they're underperforming.
Looking at the, I suppose, team that played at the weekend, obviously it's going to be a tough trip now to Ballyshannon at the weekend on Sunday. It doesn't get much tougher than going to take on Donegal this weekend.
No, and they're a serious side, and another team who probably get their criticism in terms of because they didn't get over the line last year, but they're a hell of a lot more ahead than other teams as well. Uh, I was in Ballyshannon for the Donegal Kerry game. Funny venue now, Paul. Like small tight venue. People are going up the road will get a kick out of it. I think it's a real colourful venue. So tight that in the press box beside me was one Pádraig Joyce. There's no space for him in the stand. So I'm sure he was delighted to see us watching the game beside him on the day. But yeah, no, it's not a it's a classic cliche. It's a really tough place to go. Donegal are in serious form at the minute. All that said, Galway have a pretty decent record against Donegal over the last couple of years. And as I say, there is the thing that is in the back of my head is that they're going to be playing a Monaghan team who may even be relegated at that stage, and they've got Dublin at home last.
With Donegal, do you see many changes this weekend? How do you see the Galway team looking?
I think the so where they're at currently, I think the stuff that they want to get nailed down. I wouldn't be surprised if we see Conor Farty in goals at some stage. I think that getting the number one jersey ironed out is important. I think the lads who are showing the form that they are showing, it's Paul Galvin was on our podcast recently, Paul, the Irish Examiner podcast, and he referenced the importance of letting a lad get a run of 3 or 4 games in a position and what that actually does for their confidence and developing relationships with the lads around them and as a unit. So in that vein, I think it makes a lot of sense to see Sean Kelly and even Dylan McHugh continue to play while they're playing as well as they are and try and get a bit more out of them. So all of that you'd be hoping for some of the lads who maybe picked up some light knocks. I think of someone like Shane McGlinchey maybe who we might would be good to see a bit more of. And then the lads who are actually showing serious form. I mentioned Shane McGrath earlier. Matthew Tierney is really stepping up lately as well, letting them go again. So long story short, I don't see massive changes or anything like it. If anything, I think it'd be closer to one or two.
Who's going to be Galway's number 6 this year?
Sean Kelly for me. He might not wear the position he might not wear the jersey, but he'll play the position. He's the Sean Kelly is an outstanding centre back in the centre back is a funny one now. Really
Mm.
interesting. Like if very hard to pick who's the best centre back in Gaelic football at the minute. The nature of that position has changed drastically now. But to me, so there's centre backs in terms of the actual version of it, which is like a Johnny McGrath against Kerry. In my head, he started playing centre back because he's marking Sean O'Shea, who's playing 11. Now he is marking Sean O'Shea. Like he is following him. His job is to get to him. When Sean Kelly's playing centre backs, he doesn't do that. He's playing head on a swivel on the half turn, understanding when to cover, when to hold the centre, and he does that role so well. And I think it's a big part of the reason Galway came back as well as they did against Kerry was how clever they defended in the second half. And when if Kerry sent 5 into the square, Galway only covered it with 4, left Sean Kelly free as a kind of a +1 on the outside. Kerry playing against a very tough breeze, hard to kick that ball inside, so he's able to cover that. So yeah, to me, Sean Kelly will be that version of a six. And if they need a man marking six, which isn't really, it's more just man marking a very dangerous opposition centre forward, then it won't be him. I think it will be maybe a Liam Silk or a Johnny McGrath, as we've seen. For argument's sake, if we're in a kind of final playing Mayo, I think Johnny McGrath goes to Ryan O'Donoghue at 11 and we'll mark him there. And I think people forget, watch Backlash's kind of final and tell me where did Johnny McGrath play that game? Because it wasn't centre back for me. It wasn't cornerback. I mean, sorry. I think Johnny McGrath played centre back in that game because Johnny O'Donoghue was out in the 40, and I think that hurt Mayo, and particularly given the goal, the context of what McGrath was able to do going up the other end of the pitch. So yeah, but if it's the version of what six we're talking about, I think it's John.
Correct me if I'm wrong here, but going by that, is the back 6 already looking like Johnny McGrath, Sean Fitzgerald, Jack Lynn, Dylan McHugh, Sean Kelly, Liam Silk?
To a point, yeah. There's a horses for courses element about this that depending on who comes down the tracks, what do they want out of that? And there's uh well as the ground hardens up and the year gets better and you see teams go the way they're pressing kickouts, maybe you watch Kerry against Dublin and Croke Park last Saturday, you definitely want that player in your full back line like a Jason Foley who you can just get a ball to in a corner and he'll go and he'll punch a line. And I'm not sure if any of those three are quite like that. Like if McGrath Fitzgerald or Jack Lynn. So that's when you might see maybe a Keane Hernan or even a Liam Silk in the full back line. But to answer your question, if the way I boil it down, if it's a Connacht final or a championship game in the Sam Maguire series, I think it will be a very similar version, 2 to 7, of what you just said.
It's interesting. Obviously, the goalkeeper position then at the minute, Dave McGrath's come in the last two games. He's did pretty well at stages, particularly with his kickouts. Obviously, we've seen Conor Gleeson. We're yet to see Conor Flaherty. There's obviously competitive edge building between all three of these goalkeepers now. But who do you see wearing the jersey when it comes to championship?
That is an unenviable task. So I'll do the classic easy punditry thing here first, and I'll say I don't know who it is, but I do think it has to be nailed down. I don't think the chopping and changing Galway have a bad track record of chopping and changing goalkeepers. It doesn't necessarily pan out that well. I think even Roy Lavelle and Bernie Power, or we saw it last year with Conor Farty and Conor Gleeson. So I think no, go back to that point I made earlier about consistency of position. Having that nailed down would be beneficial. The problem is that they all have very obvious strengths and they all have slight weaknesses in different ways. So Conor Gleeson's mid-range kick-out probably isn't amazing. His range is such though that it keeps presses really honest, and it's very hard. You watch even Kerry and Dublin on Saturday night. Kerry have got 11 players in Dublin's half because they know Evan Comer can't go over it. He doesn't have the range, and it's a very difficult thing to get kickouts away when a team are able to do that. And Conor Gleeson definitely keeps them honest. Uh, Immergaz has that mid-range ability, as we've seen recently. I know the mistake against Kerry. I would allow him that, to be honest. Now I do think, I increasingly think, maybe I sound like a madman here, because of the way teams are counter-pressing now, and as soon as a shot drops short, just manic press that you're under. I think a goalkeeper has to get a bit better at when they catch that short shot, get out, engage a defender. Don't just ship it, catch it and ship it, because then you're a sitting target and you're under pressure there. Whereas if they, for argument's sake, were able to engage a defender and then slip, I know this is a dangerous game now, carrying into contact like that, but I think the alternative is what happened for or for Roscommon's second goal at the weekend, where it's caught, it's chipped, you're immediately under serious pressure to the corner, and you've got nowhere to go. And then finally, Conor Farty's kind of a mix between both, and I don't think he has the when the walls close in and things are getting really under pressure. I don't think he has the exposure to that level yet because he obviously hasn't played enough games to get there. So uh, to me, the perfect mix between all those is still Conor Farty, and I'd like to see him get a couple of league games down the end of the, or get lip a couple of games at the end of the league. But I still, I still go back to it. I don't know the answer. I just know that I don't think it's beneficial to have uh, uncertainty around that going into championship.
It's probably taken us a while to get to this point, but injuries at the minute. Obviously, Damien Comer's out, Shane Walsh is out, Killy McDade, Liam Silk obviously out at the minute, along with John Daly, Shane McGlinchey and Kieran Mulhern out with Knox as well at the minute. It's a problem, isn't it?
It is a problem, but Paul, uh, I don't think this happens. Porto gets weird criticism at times, right? And one of the weird criticisms is uh, the way he's criticized for the way he talks about injuries, or maybe and I often think, like, so what I mean by that is he might say something like, "We have what we have," or "The lads are away," or they have, they're dealing with stuff or whatever, and people think, "Oh, is he having a cut off from or something?" And I often think, what else is he supposed to say? Like, if Joyce comes out and says, we can't wait to get Shane Walsh back, and we know how important he is to us and we really need him," what message does that send to the group that's there? So what he's saying publicly, I think, is the same thing as you're saying privately. We have what we have, and you just have to get on with it, basically. Yeah. Now, it is. I'd say it's very frustrating that lads are breaking down the way they are, and so Liam Celtic breaking down in a warm up against Skerry and stuff like that is just not ideal. Far from it. Sounds like John Daly's a pretty tricky knee issue at the minute as well. And I go back to your six idea. Wouldn't it cool to see him maybe get a proper run there as well. So it's frustrating, but ultimately you have to get on with it. Teams deal with injuries all the time. Kerry went into an All-Ireland final last year where Paul Ganey had a damaged shoulder. Thomas Sullivan, who looks like one of the best players in the country at the minute, was missing. They didn't have their best midfielder in Jamie O'Connor, and you suck it up.
I posed a question last week to Sean O'Donnell on the podcast. Obviously, Paul Conroy made his return, um, and unbelievable stuff really to see him back so early in the league. But obviously, when you don't have Damien Comer at the minute, is it worth, do you think, examining for Galway maybe throughout the league and to give it a try of trialing Paul Conroy in attack?
No, I do think there's there's a lot of logic to that. Is it 11 or 14? I'm not sure. It's actually something that they did, in my opinion anyway, they did have a look at a bit last year, especially against Tyrone and Tuam. I thought Paul Conroy spent a reasonable amount of time there. And given, a lot of the thing that Paul has that you really want in the rules is his amazing shooting ability. Like and I go back to the Connacht final last year, he's kicking points off left and right in the same game, which is not a no mean thing. So if you can maximize that while also not maybe having to put the same demands on him around the middle, I think there's a lot of logic to that. A game like last weekend's, I can see the sense of why they brought him in when they did. Now he got a great reception from the stand, and then he got a great reception on the pitch, and ended up getting a yellow card. And actually, you're reminding me of as I'm talking here. A few minutes later, they got done with a breach where Paul Conroy had the ball in his half, turned around to give it to Dylan McHugh, and they tried to do a direct swap. But Dylan McHugh, as he caught the ball, crossed the halfway just before Paul Conroy got back into his own half. It was fractional, but they got done for a breach for that. So that stuff will iron itself out, obviously, down the tracks. But to answer your question, yeah, I actually see that's where his future is either in a game like that, we need him to come in and control it, or maybe slightly closer to the opposition's goal.
If you're looking at this weekend, then obviously, as we mentioned, Donegal's going to be a bigger test. But is it just important to, I suppose, keep giving game time to the likes of Phil McDonough, Bushy McDonough, Charlie Power, and these players?
100%. Yeah. And you're not, uh, the
Liam
reality,
O'Connell in that list, obviously, as well.
but the reality of this, Paul, is you're not, part of that is, there's a lot of guys who are doing work right now. And if they were completely honest with you, hand on their heart, they'd say they're doing this work for 2027. It's for down the lines, and what you're going to get in 2026 championship might only be two or three.
Mm.
That might be it, but you got to find those two or three. And I think if you look at Phil McDonagh or Shane McGrath, depending on what happens with Shane McGrath, it'd be great to see if we could see a bit more of Shane McGinty. It would be really encouraging. Or Shane McDonagh, forget about the finish at the end. You look at his form over the last couple of games, and it's been really good. So yeah, just getting more into them and have that kind of. If you think about it, this Galway panel didn't lose a huge amount, 1 to 15 in terms of turnover there, but it's 20 to 35, that bracket where like even guys who just would have been around the setup and very familiar to that, people that maybe didn't get as much attention when they, I think like a Jim Cummins, a Billy Mannion, a Brian Mannion, guys like that, who also aren't there anymore. And then on top of that, you've got the Carl Sweeneys and the Johnny Maheenies and that. So there's a lot of that bracket of lads you're trying to replace as well. They'll keep the squad honest and drive it on. And I'm sure those boys are in a position to do that. But I tell you what, I mean, in terms of exposure and a test, there's nothing better than getting up to the Ballyshannon. And we've seen some very hyped players go in. I think of young Thomas Kennedy from Kerry, amazing first day out against Roscommon, and then he goes into Ballyshannon on Brendan McCole and finds it a lot more tricky. So to get that exposure will definitely stand to them in the long run.
Can Galway beat Donegal this weekend?
They can, yeah, they absolutely can for a bunch of different reasons. Um, so. I don't think Jimmy Guinness necessarily is going out saying that he threw the league last year or anything like that. But
Mm.
you have your priorities, and I definitely thought in Sothill last year their priority wasn't they were playing a longer game there, right? And in a similar token, I'm looking at the end of the Armagh game last year, and I mean Armagh had a lot of chances that they left behind them against Donegal last weekend. I missed the penalty at the end, and then missed the rebound from the penalty, and it would have been an interesting game to see what would have happened if they were able to come a bit closer. But if you're Jimmy Guinness, you're looking at that game and you're saying, well, Shane O'Donnell was holding his lower leg when he came off injured, and Kieran Moore also saw the doctor when he came off. So we don't know what's wrong with them, but you can fully see him saying, well, I'm not going to play those two lads for starters in this game next weekend. And maybe there's two or three others who've played a lot of minutes. Like Fimmer Rootie's played a lot of football recently. So maybe look at a couple of guys like that and think this is a chance for us to see a couple of more of our panel, and that we've won every game. And even if they did want to make a league final, it wouldn't be the worst thing in the world if they don't win this weekend. So that's one factor. Even if Donegal go bald headed after this, go full throttle, flat to the mat, we'll throw these lads in, we'll expose them. Galway still have demonstrated they can live with them. And a big thing with Donegal is why they're very, very, very efficient. But if you can keep their phases low, if you can break their kick out, and teams are having a bit of joy with that, then you can compete. And Galway have shown the ability to do that. And now that Keane Darcy is back and got the exposure at the weekend, their options in that middle, in terms of getting back to maybe how strong they were last year, are starting to develop as well. So yeah, they absolutely can. There's this is not a I know you're not saying this now, but this is not a lost cause or anything like it.
What's the best way for them to go and approach Donegal this weekend?
I think in the vein that I spoke about there, in terms of that you're conscious that you're trying to expose lads to a tough task up in Ballyshannon and what you want to get out of that game. But at the same time, you're trying to develop your options a bit more and a couple of things that you're trying to improve in terms of what you're doing on your own kick out. And certainly, I'd say Galway are a good defence. Like they are a really good defence, but there are some sloppy mistakes that allow teams in too easily lately. And if you can eradicate a small bit of that and just get that consistency of performance that you spoke about at the very start here into their play, then I think they'd be pretty happy with that. So I don't think they'll be feeling the heat at their backs here. By the way, I genuinely don't, particularly given the way the table and fixtures look right now. So there is a chance here to make a statement, to get another fill up. A couple of those very negative commenters might have a reason for a bit of joy and just yeah, make sure this thing is moving in the right direction.
How many points do you see Galway getting in their final three games?
I think the beat Monaghan anyway. That last Dublin game will be interesting in terms of what actually where where both teams are at that stage, if you know what I mean. So
Hmm.
I think five at a minimum and maybe seven.
Just finally, Mars, before we finish, Paul Bailey's been fairly vocal this week about obviously Galway back in the split season and not wanting August or Ireland finals. What's your own view on this as it goes to Congress at the weekend?
My personal view on the motion or on Paul Bellew's
Well, just on the motion and I suppose his own points because even it was interesting to I was listening to him on the Smaller Fish podcast today and it was interesting to hear him I suppose about the increase in the amount of players and clubs since the split season has come in.
Uh, I think Paul Bellew deserves enormous credit for how he's been able to articulate the, and I'm going to say this because it's a side of the argument I'm on in a personal capacity, but in my view, he's articulating the views of the county in terms of when I'm at convention, when you're talking to clubs, when you see participation levels, there's a huge appreciation for the calendar the way that it is. When you ask current Galway players, especially intercounty players, about this, we asked John Maher about it on the record last Wednesday, and he said he likes it the way it is. So that's his job, is to represent his county and make that the case heard. And I think he's done an exceptional job at that and just outlines some people might not have heard it, but just in ultra simplistic terms, the consequences for what it would mean if the season goes back by 2 weeks and you're eating into a participation time for players who all they wanted was certainty in the calendar and a chance to play a bit of summer ball as well. So and I know that's not what you asked me about, Paul, but I think the consequences for the minor motion, which maybe we can return to in a couple of minutes,
Mm.
are equally as pressing. So all that's it. So that's in terms of how Paul Belly was spoken over the last week, and in fairness, over the last couple of months on this. The motion itself, I think the best thing that could happen is this goes to Congress on Saturday. Just get it on the floor and get some certainty about this. And if what comes from this is no, we've made our decision, we're not changing the calendar. Great. Now let's look at the competition structure and go back to John Maher's point last week, making the most of what we actually do have. So that from my perspective is a very easy. That would be progress. It would absolutely progress if we can just get that nailed down. And the point that Paul Belly was made and that I consistency around me is it's promotion, it's players. Like that is the bottom. That promotion is having a set format of games, having clarity around your calendar, and we currently have that. So yeah, my instinct would be progress might be maybe improving the calendar in terms of the way it's laid out from a competition perspective, but in terms of moving dates or stuff, I'm not so sure.
Is there any chance of it not passing?
There's a very strong chance of it not passing. From what I gathered during the week.
Okay.
Yeah. There's a lot of count. Uh, the way this things works, and maybe a small bugbear of mine maybe is the lack of debate around not just this now, but motions in general. Like they're only issued this week, and there was actually an online briefing about this, so you're starting to just get a sense of some of these motions. But uh, For starters, it looks like you've got Wexford, Cork, Kerry, Galway who will oppose this. That's a lot of votes on a Congress floor gone already. And you've now got other counties who are making the call that they're going to trust their delegate in certain instances. So if the argument is strong on the floor, you sway them as well. And we'll soon hear what other counties. We're talking early in the week now here, so we'll soon hear later on in the week what other counties are going to do. We wouldn't be surprised if others decide to do the same thing. They come out and say they're going to oppose this. Now, I still think it needs to be voted on, and we do need we need the shot of it. But I don't think this is a slam dunk or anything like it. No.
Yeah, you still see there's, I suppose, that people will actually vote for August All Irelands.
No, oh, sorry. The opposite. I
Oh,
think that yeah. I think there's a strong chance that it won't pass. Is my
oh,
instinct
pass.
right now. Yeah.
Okay.
Just Paul, before you leave the Congress thing, the minor one to me is anybody who's involved in underage football in Galway will attest to what I'm talking about here. The county has been involved in 10 All Ireland finals if you between hurling and football at a minor. If we decide that the All Ireland finals or that the minor finals have to be played at the same time as the All Ireland finals, it means you're robbing thousands of teenagers a month of summer football. They're not. There will be no championship games in right now. Currently, last year the All Ireland minor finals played the first week of July. The hurling finals played the last week of June. If we decide that they're not going to play until the end of July, that's a month taken out of the calendar for players across the country, and we're doing that purely because there's this talk that people who go to an Ireland final deserve to have a curtain raiser. In which case, why does it have to be a minor final? Get something else to be the curtain raiser. But doing that to, I that's one I would feel very strongly about in terms of what the consequences of what that would have for the knock-on impact of that. And again, I think Paul Bellew has spoken really, really well about that in terms of what it
Yeah,
would mean for.
particularly, I was only thinking about it during the week this week. So you obviously have to go in minor grade under 17, and under 17 club championships can run obviously along July and August, but particularly an under 19 championship, because for most clubs these seven under 17s are going to be playing under 19 for their clubs.
And you're talking about the crossover there is considerable now already, and you've got you've got lads who will be training for senior or their adult team at the same time as all of that's going on as well. So forcing that into, I mean, if push that back by a month and you're knocking the whole thing out of kilter, in my opinion. And these players should be playing championship in summer where available. The under 19 has been very successful in the county the last couple of years. I don't see, and it's not look. You can't just look at it from a Galway prism, obviously, but definitely I think. Uh, as far as I can see, the only argument for that motion is that people want something else before the Ireland final. That I haven't heard a case beyond that. In which case, there's countless alternatives to just throwing a money game in that, and what it would the implications it would have for summer football for a lot of club players.
Is there any case to bring it back as a curtain raiser? Because if you look at it when it was played as a curtain raiser, the majority of people didn't really come in until the end of a minor game, or the majority of people might even miss it. Like if you look at, I suppose, minor finals played by themselves, they've been a spectacle. They've been an occasion. I think obviously back to Tipperary and Kilkenny was obviously one example in Nolan Park. So it's hard to understand what's the actual, I suppose, value of getting this back as a curtain raiser.
Yeah, I couldn't get you more. You've seen, and the festivity comes around. I think that off the underage team as well in the last couple of years,
Mm.
what they've done. So the case is, Paul, that people want value for money, and an Ireland final ticket is not cheap, and I completely appreciate that. But I just don't think it has to be a minor final. There's other alternatives. Like we heard, how many players did we hear talk about how much they loved the interprovincials and the Railway Cup element of that. If there's lads who are being knocked out, there'll be teams who are out of their intercounty championships in May. Could you form a Railway Cup and play that before the All Ireland final, or have a different version of a curtain raiser? I don't think it has to be a minor game, or it doesn't have to be an underage game. If that's the primary concern, which is, to me, that's what it feels like. So yeah, I'm not ignoring people who think All Ireland finals are very expensive and they'd like more than one game, but I don't see why, as a consequence of that, we should be allowed to take the a month of summer football away from teenage footballers. That's when the great irony is, like, there's certain people who make huge cases about the competition from other sports and all this kind of carry on. That's when it actually would be an issue. Like if there's lads who are looking and saying,
Mm.
"What am I going to do for this month if I don't have championship?" Then maybe they're starting to look elsewhere. But I don't see To be honest, I'm reluctant to engage in that case because I don't see it the same way that some people do.
Yeah, I think you're spot on there. Great stuff, Mars. Thanks for your time.
Thanks, Paul.
This episode is sponsored by DroneWorks Ireland, your go-to place when it comes to buying a drone, repairing a drone, and also when you need professionals to carry out any aerial work you may need. Check out their website at www.droneworksireland.ie. Now, in part two of the show, I'm delighted to be joined by Paddy McGill to get the view on Donegal this weekend. Paddy, obviously, for people who aren't aware, you did have a brief stint in Galway before you made the return home.
Yeah, 11 years in total. 11 years in total. So it's always been, I'm living down in Longford now in the Midlands, but Galway's always been kind of a second home to me, to be honest. So I remember meeting you actually. You were on TY work experience, and I
Yeah.
was doing updates for Galway Bay FM. That's where it all started with Ollie Turner and covering matches all over Galway and Pearse Stadium and Tuam Stadium. And yeah, loved Galway, to be honest. Sad to leave it. 11 brilliant years in it, and so many friends down there from the hurling fraternity, the football, and sure, listen, great county, brilliant city, has absolutely everything. So yeah, nothing but good memories. And yeah, that's where I started the broadcasting. Ollie Turner. I don't know how he didn't sack me about 20 times for getting all the pronunciations wrong in Galway, but all the Galway surnames and that. But yeah, listen, sport mad county, and for an anorak like myself into the GA, it was a brilliant for my formative years and that. So yeah, love Galway, and I'm not just saying this because I'm on a Galway podcast, but always would cheer for Galway. I was disappointed just didn't win in 2024 and 2022, and nothing to do with the opposition, just wanted Galway to win, to be honest.
Talking about Donegal and the journey that I suppose Jim McGuinness has brought this team on, what's it been like covering it? And I suppose seeing Donegal come back to the top because people probably forget there was a few tough years there before McGuinness came in.
A lot of tough years, I suppose when he came in first, from 2011 to 2014, made two All Ireland finals and a semi final in 11, and obviously won it in 12 and got us back there in 14. Now, if you're a traditional powerhouse that used to win in All Irelands like Kerry, Dublin, Galway, I think of nine in total. The currency is All Ireland's, but just getting Donegal to dine at that top table, that was only our second ever All Ireland win. And kind of in 14, we thought maybe things had changed because maybe we didn't build properly in 92, I suppose, when Jim was a member. So a lot of tough years, and particularly probably, you know, we've always felt in Donegal there's 39, 40, 41 clubs. We've always felt we've had really, really good footballers and a lot of tough years with really good teams. And there's a couple of years there just fell a little bit short. We were always tipped to, maybe we were the team to maybe possibly give Dublin a rattle. We could beat anyone on our day, and a couple of challenging years, and then Jim comes back and yeah, it's been brilliant. Probably for the main reason is it's like anything in life, it's not just sport or Gaelic games. If you're doing something to the best of your ability, then you're not going to look back with any regrets. And I always feel with Jim there, I think they'll always be working at optimum levels and that. So I think it's been brilliant. Look, a really tough defeat to yourselves in 2024. We were close, but I suppose we felt, you know, this is better than the previous year, for example. And then, as you've lost two finals in 3 years. Losing a final can be really, really difficult. And maybe if it's Kerry Dublin, their journey at the start of every year is, if you don't win an All Ireland, as I said, it's the currency. But for us, look, it was a brilliant year. I think we just had a bad day at the office. And yeah, it's been brilliant. And listen, a good start this year as well. I think coming into the season, having made an All Ireland final, I just felt you're a wee little bit concerned. Could you have a flat year after it? Even saw it with Hughes. I think he's made the preliminary quarters in 23 after making a final in 22. Last year, by your own standards, I know he's won Connacht in those years, but for your own standards, maybe just a little bit of a dip year as well. But, so far, so good. But it comes with that government health warning. It's only February. But no, the journey's been brilliant since Jim's back.
What did you make personally when Jim does his first interview after the Dublin game and the zonal defence and the backlash of that All Ireland defeat?
I get it, if I'm being honest with you. I think those lads, whether it's Pádraig Joyce, Jack O'Connor, or Jim McGuinness, they're working in a real high performance setting. And I can get the frustrations at how if something doesn't go your way on a particular day and you use a particular tactic, then that's almost framed. That's it. Oh, zonal defense is dead, or this works or this works. I had a good guest to your own podcast, Maurice Brosnan, in a preview for the All Ireland final last year with Cahir O'Kane, and he said, "Whoever wins this game," to paraphrase Morris, he was basically saying, I hope the narrative isn't framed around, well, that is how you should do, and that's what club teams and that's what county teams are going to use for the next couple of years. So, no, I get his frustration. He's, I suppose, been asked the same question all the time. I think he was asked similar questions in the McKenna Cup final and that. Jim's actually a very receptive fella. Jim's very intelligent. He's high IQ, he's high emotional and intelligence, and I think he's spot on. I think some teams get away with winning with a particular style, but because maybe they traditionally have played a different way in the last 40, 50 years, the media just latches on to that. So, look, Kerry last year were outstanding. They won the game, but the reality is Kerry Kerry won the game. I think Stephen O'Mara called it the best Ulster team of all, only they're not from Ulster. Kerry ran the ball. I think they got 2 points from what he calls progressive kick passes, in the All Ireland final. I think they got one from a progressive kick pass in the semi final. So then there's this thing, well, Kerry are very skillful, obviously, but there's this just labels that certain teams get. And I just think it's maybe a bit of frustration that's built up.
Obviously, Jim brings the X factor and the interest when it comes to Donegal football. But do you even think maybe with that reaction from the Dublin game, is there a bit of a siege mentality here when it comes to Donegal of us against them?
Um, I think politically it may feed into the sporting context. There are no trains in Donegal. There's a lot of immigration, migration. Look, Galway's no different, obviously. Use of trains though, but um, yeah. Look, I think any county will use siege mentality to some degree. It can be something definitely we even saw with Kerry last year. Their own media, when they hammer them, they use a siege mentality. I suppose it can be channeled through a different sphere. I think, if somebody's getting hammered in the media for playing a particular way or they're moved around grounds or whatever, then I think anybody, Tyrone were the masters of it. Kerry use it themselves. So, no, I don't think all people feel it's an us versus them, but I think Jim and everybody else will use whatever tools they have if it gets an extra 2 or 3%. We are a contrary bunch, though.
So far, so good, isn't it? 4 from 4, 8 points. You couldn't be much happier, really.
Yeah, and as I said, the only concern I had coming into this year was that little bit of flatness. Now, look, it's very early. Even after 2012, I felt we didn't really get going well in 2013 in the league, and we were relegated. So the first port of call, whether you're Pádraig Joyce, Jim McGuinness, Ger Brennan, or whoever it is, Jack O'Connor, first port of call for the league is, for me, it's about three things. Number one, don't get relegated. That's number one. Do not get relegated. Number two is probably try and avoid serious injuries, obviously. Number three is maybe develop a couple of more styles of play, your principles of play, and all that there. So I think that's always first and foremost. So, yeah, 4 from 4. Playing fairly strong teams most weeks, and I think with the league in general, you're damned if you do, and sometimes you're damned if you don't. If you go all out and win the league and you win the All Ireland, people will say, well, sure, that's because they had a brilliant league as well. They set the platform. But if you go too early in the league, you go too well early in the league, and then you fall short later on in the championship, people say you peaked too early. So it's the narrative suits whatever way it goes. But listen, so far so good. I'm hearing a lot of talk the last couple of weeks, even on my own podcast, will he pull up the handbrake? Talk like that. I don't think so. But yeah, all so far so good, Paul. Yeah.
Do you think Donegal are going for the lead this year?
I don't know. I'm not privy to exactly what goes on in the camp. My own guess, my own unqualified guess is that they are trying to win every single game, whether it's up on a wall at the start of the year in a hotel room or maybe a big team meeting going, we are trying to win the league. I'm not so sure. I think I know it's a bit boring, but I think obviously if you win every game, you will actually go and win the league. I don't think Donegal are at fourth or fifth gear myself. I believe they'll play a strong team against Galway. Last year was very different, Paul. Very,
Yeah.
very different. The proximity to the championship. And I heard some people on national podcasts saying, Jim pulled up the handbrake last year and look what happened to them. Donegal started off Ulster brilliantly. Donegal won Ulster. They, beat the All Ireland champions in the Ulster final. Like, I would say it did work. I would say his tactics did work. If our metric of success is only winning an All Ireland, well, we all might as well pack it in. They didn't get over in the line in the final, but that was how can that be anything related to pulling up the handbrake, quote unquote, a couple of months earlier? Do I really think they're going out to win the league? No, but you could inadvertently find yourself in a league final. The consequences of winning every match is you will. I do think Donegal are in really good position in the league, and I do think they'll make a league final. And I think if you're in a league final, yeah, absolutely. We've only won one league ever since 2007. So I suppose my answer is I think Donegal will. I think this year, the way the table lies, I think you could find yourself in a league final with 10 points. And I think if they get to a league final, then I think absolutely, yeah. I think they'll want to win it in that instance, yeah.
Jason McGee bringing a different dynamic to the Donegal attack this year.
Yeah, I said on my own podcast a couple of times, he's one of those players, you probably have them in Galway, every county has them, where maybe they're not household names in other counties, but you're aware of how good they are from club, from underage, maybe the start of their county career. And they've had maybe a stop-start couple of years. And, I remember even my own in-laws down here saying last year, I was like, you just don't know how good Jason McGee is and how important he could be. He was a fabulous underage player. Excellent. He's gigantic. And I mean, he is huge. This year he's been operating between midfield 14 and he's come out around midfield. It's been a stop-start couple of years, Paul, for him. Jim was praising him himself. In his own words, he said something along the lines of, he's still not fully there yet, but he would be an unquantifiable asset to Donegal this year. In my own opinion, if Jason McGee can stay injury free, he could be a major, major part in Donegal having a really positive, not just spring, but going into summer. He was an unbelievably talented soccer player as well. I think could be wrong. I think he played centre half, like really, really good. Might have spent some time over in England, and he's a massive asset. And just didn't get to use him over the last couple of years. He came on in the All Ireland final last year. He's just a giant gap. I suppose the big thing for me with him is he's so big, but he's a footballer as well, if that makes sense. He's
Hmm.
the skill of someone 5'9", 5'10". So he's like having a new player back, basically, even though he's had those couple of years, but it's been stop start, as I said.
What about the big man, Mr. Murphy? Will we see him this weekend?
My predictions, and they're normally wrong. I think we will. I think we will. I don't think he played the away games last year. He didn't travel to Armagh. He wasn't in the 26, certainly. Whether he was there or not, I'm not sure. I do think we'll see him, yes, in Ballyshannon. He, came on against Mayo and Letterkenny, and he came on, you know, um, he came on against Kerry as well, sorry. And yeah, he probably needs 40, 50 minutes at this stage because he's been come back later. He get, an injury at the tail end of last year. And yeah, I just think he just gives a huge boost. I don't know if you're ever in the ground where he actually comes on like he's our savior in Donegal and very, very committed to the year. A lot of people were asking last year, will he stay another year? I think when he made the decision to come back, even in WhatsApp groups to be chatting to GA Anorax and that, and they're like, yeah, it's a 2 year thing for Michael. So I do. I think Donegal will play a strong team this weekend. I think
You
there's going to
don't
be
you
a
don't
couple.
see them resting anyone or
No, and again, the national media will probably jump on it. There'll probably be a couple of force changes. I think Shane O'Donnell was taken off the last day of the wing forward with an injury. Kieran Moore, his clubmate from St. Eunan's, also. I think Jim said he may have rolled his ankle. So I think we'll see two changes there. that half forward line seems to be, a little bit jinxed at the moment because Darrell Whale has a hand injury. And Kieran Thompson, of course, was taken off in the All Ireland final. He had a really bad injury. We won't see him, till later on in the year, I'm sure. So, yeah, I think we'll see a couple of changes. And again, people will probably say, Sir Jim's making the changes. But I think these are forced changes. And hopefully the injuries are, you know yourself, it's hard to get too much information on injuries these days from any manager. So I do think Jim, look, I think these they're top inter-county managers by getting there in the first place, they're usually quite successful. They know what they're doing. Those boys don't want to lose a game of Connect Four. Those lads don't want to lose a game of Snakes and Ladders. Last year was completely different. I couldn't believe the backlash last year. Donegal had to focus on the first round of the Ulster Championship. This year, there's a huge gap, Paul. Between the league final itself, which I think is the 29th of March, for Donegal, they're not out playing down until the 26th of April. That's a lovely gap this time. I would nearly contend that you'd nearly want that league final more so, and I don't know, do you want to go 5 weeks from the Monaghan game into the first round of Ulster? I know they'll maybe play a challenge game or two, but so yeah, I don't see wholesale changes this week for Donegal. I could be wrong. I think two, three max, and again they'll be forced. You might see a case if Donegal made the league final, they might maybe for the final game if they're already in the league final, they might maybe make wholesale changes maybe in the Monaghan match. But you want to keep the winning run going as well, Paul.
The former Conor O'Donnell and Finn Doherty, they've probably been two of your top performers, I think it's safe to say.
Yeah, and again, Connor had a couple of injury problems, it was the year or two, and it's great to see him back. Just really adds kind of pace to the setup, and certainly in slow attacks. And, I know there's various different styles of breakdown, defense, but he just adds something different. He's lightning pace. He's a really intelligent footballer, and he just adds that zip and X factor. And had an outstanding All Ireland final last year in what was a tough day for Donegal. So yeah, really, he's a good lad. Finn Doherty would have been. I've not really in Donegal since probably Michael Murphy was coming through. Heard such talk about a player coming through the ranks. So I'm from Ardra and he's from Glenties, which is the Neve Connell club. It's only 6, 7 mile over the road. And we heard about this guy from when he was 9, 10, 11, 12, 14, 16. Same club actually as McGuinness and a prodigious talent. He was just being raved about by everybody. He's an unbelievable player. Like he's as good as I've seen at that age coming through Donegal. He can pretty much do anything. Last year we saw him, he was part very much of a full-on zonal defence because he was very good at getting out. He was kind of in corner back. This year he's been moved further out. I don't know if it makes a huge difference to Finbar because he can pretty much pop up anywhere. Plays with a smile on his face. He's Yeah, his fitness levels are absolutely off the charts, to be honest with you. He can pop up anywhere. If you came from Mars and you come down to watch Finbar, you don't know if he's playing corner forward, you don't know if he's playing midfield. He can tackle, he can break forward, he can kick a score. He's just a class player, to be honest with you, and still, like, I think he's just gone 20. So he's very much the future of Donegal, and he's a class player to have. Like he's such a help as well. You can put him in the zone, you can put him in a hybrid system, you can get him to man mark somebody. An unbelievable club championship. You'd think there's two or three of them playing.
Is there a battle for the number one jersey now, do you think? Gavin Mulroney's performances have been unbelievable so far in the league. Obviously, Patton is to come back, and I know Patton's been top class over the last few years, but the performances Mulroney's given, it surely has to give the management something to think about.
Yeah, and it's just that the position as well. You're damned if you do, and you're damned if you don't. As a manager, there was no question over the past couple of years about Sean Patton. Now he's injured, obviously at the moment. Now I did hear the last day that Sean could be out for a while, so I don't know what a while is. I don't know if that's a month. I don't know if it's 2 months. I don't know if it's 3 months. I don't want to, just throw that out there without actually, factually knowing. Gavin Moraney has come in and it's a hard number to fill in Donegal. We've been lucky in the last 20 years to have Paul Durkin and Sean Patton, just two outstanding goalkeepers. And as you know, Paul, and from all your guests in the podcast, and I'm involved with the club myself. I think it's the most important position now on the pitch. Like I just think it's so important. Gavin Mulroney's been brilliant. Last year and the year before, maybe he was coming in and getting a couple of minutes, but he wasn't building up that consistency of games. Now we are seeing it. Bring something just a little bit different than Sean. Sean always had an out ball. Sean's kickouts were absolutely outstanding, but he had that out ball between the mid range and the long range kick. If you're under a little bit of pressure, maybe in an overload on one side or whatever, Sean could just balloon it almost into the opposition 45 or whatever. Gavin's a slightly different goalkeeper, and he's if he makes a mistake, I think the best trait Gavin has, because he's a laid back character and he's really kind of earthly. He's a really cool customer. He just if he makes a mistake, he just forgets about it. He's really good from place balls as well, and I hate saying it, and I think we all do. He's a brilliant shot stopper as well. So it's a good complaint to have. And yeah, if Sean Patton comes back in whatever, maybe a couple of weeks, couple of months, and yeah, there's probably a conversation this year, whereas there wouldn't have been in previous years. So Gavin's been brilliant.
We seen with the Kerry game, Ballyshannon obviously tight. It's difficult
Mm.
for any team to come up the road here and try and overturn Donegal. Could you just give listeners an insight, I suppose, for the people travelling this weekend and what to expect for Galway in Ballyshannon on Sunday?
Yeah, just I think the capacity's in around 9,000. Get there early. The good news for Galway supporters, I suppose, Galway, like Donegal's a huge county. The good news is you're just coming into Donegal and you're almost in Ballyshannon. You don't have to go that extra
Yeah,
10 hour flight,
I
10-hour
remember
flight
going.
up the Letterkenny.
Yeah, I remember going to O'Donnell Park a few years ago. It's a fair spin up now.
I'm living in Longford at the moment, and lads were saying they were going to Buncrana a few weeks ago, and they thought when they hit Bundoran, geez, happy days. Here we're in Donegal. I was like, yeah, 5 hour flight from Bundoran, but yeah. So I'm trying to think of a ground in Galway that it might be similar to. It wouldn't be obviously as big as Tuam Stadium, which is the spiritual home of no football in Galway, but maybe Duggan Park type.
Mm.
There's a little stand over the far side. You'll walk in and there's a terrace. It's about 8,500 to 9,500. You walk in and there's a terrace on your near side when you walk in. The beauty of the terrace is it's kind of a nice slant to it, so you'll get a good view of the pitch from the terrace, okay? The stand, the cupboard is really, really small. I think maybe a Duggan Park, something like that. That's over the far side. And yeah, and then there's a big bank behind the goal. Um, has a kind of a, you know, yeah, there's kind of a nice slant on that as well. There's a big clubhouse there. You're in a real GAA area there. Arua, the club, the home club, who put on a great show. Brilliant, brilliant club. Back in the 80s, 90s, won loads of championships and that. And Maurice Brosnan, I was talking to him. He was up at the Donegal Kerry game, and he absolutely loved Ballyshannon. He thought this is just fantastic. Paul, it is brilliant for a league match. It's outstanding for a league match. Why? Because it's going to be packed to the rafters. We all saw, watching some of these Dublin games in Croke Park, and it's like, I really think it adds to the occasion. I think
Mm.
it's an awful look. I think it's a bad look in Gaelic games. I don't think it's anything to promote the games. I know they have a season ticket issue. I'd love to see them back in Parnell Park. I know they're oversubscribed to season tickets, but the Galway supporters will have a really good day out in Ballyshannon. They'll have a really good day out in Ballyshannon. Just get there early, no more than in
Yeah,
crowd,
is there an element here of getting in early and getting your spot?
without a doubt.
Yeah.
Without a doubt, yeah. Look, Ballyshannon. It's a reasonable sized town. Probably not as big as Loughrea, say, but it's a little bit smaller than Loughrea, say, something like that. And definitely get up there early. Yeah, the only thing I haven't looked at before coming on this podcast was the weather. It's been difficult, obviously, over the last couple of games. Getting into the stand would be very, very difficult. It's a really, really small stand. The pitch itself is outstanding. They relaid the surface, was it a year and a half, 2 years ago? And they've done a fabulous job there. So no, I think Galway supporters will have a good day out. The couple of Kerry supporters that made the journey. It's just that packed to the rafters. there's this electricity between the supporters and the teams and that, and hopefully you'll see Michael Murphy come on, and it'll just be turn into a carnival atmosphere. But you'll be well looked after in Donegal. You'll be well looked after.
Potentially Michael Murphy and Paul Conroy on at the same time.
Hopefully, yeah. What a legend Conroy is. He was when I was with my Galway BFM days. I remember him playing for St James's and that, and what a player! What a player! I suppose just great to have him back because Galway, chatting at the start of the year to lads before the season, not even on podcast, but just out and about, and it's just the one team that can turn it on if you get everybody together. But I think, unfortunately, just this label, I suppose, in Galway in kind of the last 2 years is every time Galway are mentioned, it just seems to be injuries seem to follow it, and it must be really, really frustrating for the management team and supporters that you just can't always get your best players on the pitch, and that's really, really difficult. So yeah, great to see Paul back and fully deserved of his Player of the Year a couple of years ago as well. And what was, a very difficult ending for Galway that year.
What have you made of Galway so far? Obviously, it's been a bit up and down so far in the league when you look at obviously defeats to Mayo and narrowly to Roscommon last week, and then a draw against Kerry and a win against Armagh.
Yeah, it's like Galway could be on 6 points or they could be on no points. So maybe three is just about right for them. Um, Lacking probably a bit of consistency, obviously. If what happened against Roscommon happened, you know, the last game of a championship and you were knocked out, well, like it'd be a long, long, long winter. Like, but the beauty of that is it is still only a league game. You get a chance to wrong the rights. I think Galway will finish very strong. You have Monaghan and Dublin. Is the Dublin game at home or is it the other way?
Yeah, Monaghan,
Way.
that's in Inniskeen and then Dublin at home to finish.
Yeah, that'll be a tough place to go in Skeen as well. I know it's a horrible cliche, tough place to go, but I do expect Galway to pick up 4 points in their last two games, whatever happens this weekend. You're still developing players. I was very impressed with Liam O'Keneally the last day. I think he was pronounced wrong in a couple of different places. That obviously Shane McGrath's really good. Then you still have loads of experience. Matthew Tierney, I was listening to your podcast recently. Such an underrated player. It's great to see John Maher back as well. I think that battle in around the middle third is going to be absolutely fascinating between Langan, McGee, Hugh McFadden. Cian Darcy can move back there from wing forward. You'll have John Maher, as I said, Matthew Tierney. If Galway get everybody back, I believe personally, one of three teams is going to win Sam this year. No, it's not the question you're asking me. I think it'll be Kerry, Donegal, or Galway. I really do. That's if
You
Galway.
can't you can't see anyone else win that.
Uh, no, I think one of those three is going to win it this year.
Yeah,
I firmly believe one of those three. If they can all avoid major injuries, that's you're talking star men from each team. Like, Killian McDade. I'm not sure what the story is exactly in Killian McDade. That's a long-term injury, isn't it?
it seems that way at the minute, anyways.
We're
Yeah,
talking McComber for a long time, obviously. What a class player. Shane Walsh, Daly. Is that a long-term injury, Daly's as well?
Daly's his knee. Yeah, Liam Silk obviously got injured in the Kerry warm up as well, so
Because they're
he,
massive players,
yeah,
like they're
yeah.
massive players, but still pure class everywhere. Um, Obviously Sean Fitzgerald, Sean Kelly wing back. I'd say Fitzgerald might go on Gallen this week. I'm not sure who Rorty will go on. Maybe Shane McGrath was operating at wing forward the last
Mhm.
day. Maybe they'll put Rorty on Darcy. Darcy's a little bit bigger than him. Maybe that wouldn't suit. They expect McDonough to maybe picked up by McCall. Morgan maybe and Finnerty. And you're rhyming out these Galway lads and who they're missing. They still have such talent. So Galway a little bit inconsistent, but plenty to work on. You brilliant management team there. I know some of them from my days in Galway, so they'll be very disappointed with that result against Roscommon. But I felt probably, you know, there was an early Christmas present from the Armagh result, so kind of maybe lucky enough that night to get come away with maximum points
Mm.
and picked up a brilliant point down in Tralee. So I think it's evened itself out for Galway so far. I honestly don't think Galway are absolutely. They'll be looking over their shoulder, of course. Even if Galway were to lose to Donegal this weekend, I do think Galway will pick up 4 points in the last two games. The Dublin, oh, I know you shouldn't get too upset or what you see or too hyped up with what you see in the league, but I don't know what Galway, I don't know what Dublin. I couldn't see any clarity of play at all from them at the weekend, so I do expect Galway to beat Dublin. I presume that's in Pearse Stadium, is it?
Yeah, Pearse Stadium, 22nd to finish, yeah.
Okay, yeah, fair enough. So
What sort of game are you expecting? Obviously, if you look back to last year, the weather just made an absolute mess of that game in Pearse Stadium. But what sort of game are you expecting? Because obviously, Galway will be looking to get points on the board here to, I suppose, go one step closer to safety. And Donegal obviously going for a league final. What kind of game do you expect on Sunday?
I'm just as I'm always looking at the weather about weeks in advance in the game because I think you're 100% correct. I think the weather is playing with such ramifications, and lo and behold, Met Éireann here, it's absolutely going to be lashing. So maybe we won't expect that much. I don't think Donegal would do anything different. I think they'll run the ball. I think Donegal put up high scores without kicking. Seem to be kicking more two-pointers this year. I think it'll be an open game. I think obviously the last time we played was in 2024 in the championship. I know we met last year in the league. It was a good game at stages. Then it went into real cagey football. It was under the old rules. I think we'll see a really high scoring game. I think we'll see a really high scoring game. I think it'll be an open game. I think whoever wins the game, I think we'll be talking the next day about who wins the midfield battle. I even saw the last day Galway's stats were incredible, on kickouts the last day when they built up that lead. Lo and behold, Roscommon get a foothold in the middle, and like it's just such a platform for winning every single game. So I think McGinness calls it the piggery around the middle. I think whoever comes out on top in that particular area will probably go on and win the game. Both sides have devastating forwards. I think we'll see a good open game, Paul. I think we'll see a good open game. I think Donegal, with a home crowd behind them, will categorically and unequivocally really want to win this match. I think Galway, I'm seeing Porrick Joyce at the last Donegal match in Ballyshannon, which was a couple of weeks ago against Kerry, and I saw Porrick Joyce there just having a little survey of the ground, having a little look. It's early in the season, but with Donegal starting so well, I would imagine from that Galway camp they'll be looking at this game as maybe a starting point for their season. There are starting points in everybody's season. Kerry's last year was much later in the year. It came against Armagh at 15 minutes. There'll be a moment where you just turn around and go, we can turn our season around here. And if Porrick Joyce can, Donegal haven't lost in Ballyshannon in the league since 2009. Now, granted, they haven't played a million matches there. Dublin were the last team to win there. The record is really good in Ballyshannon because of that little partisan atmosphere that's created there. So I think if Galway, from their point of view, can get a win here, they look at this as a huge victory. Pretty much guarantee survival. Close to it, because I think Dublin or Roscommon or sorry, Dublin and Monaghan are both going to struggle, to get 6, 7 points. And yeah, I think it'll be a good game of football. I think it'll be a really open game of football. I really do.
You'll obviously be on commentary duty with Ocean FM on Sunday, but how do you see it going on Sunday?
Eh, so apart from the weather, that's the only one I didn't think of. I suppose I'll go for a Donegal win. I'm not huge into these records in terms of, Actually, just before I start, what I couldn't believe was Donegal have only met Galway in the league 15 times, which feels really low. And
Mm.
Donegal
I I
have
suppose Galway were in Division Two there
And we were in
for
Division Two, and
yeah.
Donegal were in Division Two. Donegal haven't beaten Galway in the league since they were both met in Division Two back in 2014. Donegal won that day. Donegal have only won 3 out of 15 against Galway. The record's it's actually atrocious. Galway's record's brilliant against Donegal. So I don't love records and all that. I'd have to go for a Donegal win. Home soil. I don't think McGuinness. Well, I think they'll be driven to win another game and keep that momentum. But there's nobody better to spoil a party than Galway. Have spoiled a few parties. 1983. I don't remember it, but I'm hearing the stories of it. The All Ireland semi final, late goal in 2024. So that was a tough one as well to take. So Galway will be Galway will be hard beat, but I'm going to give the nod to Donegal. Just about.
Here's hoping for more of the same this weekend, Paddy. But great stuff, and thanks a million for your time.
Yeah, thanks for having me, Paul. Thanks a million.